Lately, I've been preoccupied by the thought of our society just falling apart because, all the stuff that's going on. The world just seems so fragile, and that was before the riots. And at times like this, my mind wanders towards history and literature because that's what I do. And lately, I've been rereading Augustine's City of God. It's an ancient book, but it's quite relevant at our moment. Let me give you the context in which Augustine wrote the book. In the year 410 AD, the barbarian Visigoths conquered and sacked the city of Rome. Now, this event was an earthquake that sent shockwaves across all of Europe and the entire Mediterranean region. Everyone freaked out. It's as if the entire world turned upside down and inside out. I don't think we can come close to imagining how horrifying it must have been for the people living in the Roman Empire at that time. We think we have it bad right now, but that's nothing like what these people went through. Their world was ending. And as one contemporary put it at the time, the mother of the world has been killed. Jerome, the priest and theologian who lived at the time of the fall, wrote, "If Rome can perish, what can be saved?" The idea of the city of Rome falling at the hands of a bunch of what the Romans considered to be rude and rough, uneducated, primitive barbarians was inconceivable. The city walls of Rome had not been breached in over 800 years. Think about that, 800 years. Now, I think of the United States as a very solid, old, and reliable nation. But, we've only been around for 250 years. If the city of Rome fell, they feared that the rest of the empire would crumble. And they were right. It eventually did. That was the first domino of many that would fall. But it's far worse than just that. In the ancient Roman world, Romans thought they were the only one civilized nation in the world. It was them. It was them and no one else. And that was Rome. And by 400 AD, Romans believed that they had more or less conquered the entire world and civilized it. There were a few marginal barbarians, tribes left on the periphery. So if Rome falls in the minds of the Romans, then the only civilized order in the world will collapse, and that's it. The rest of the world is just barbaric. So the Romans believed that to be Roman was to be civilized, and everyone else was a barbarian. And to be civilized was to be human, meaning that the barbarians were not really human. And by Augustine's time, to be Roman was to be Christian, and to be Christian was to be Roman. Roman citizenship and the church overlap. The church only went as far as the empire went. Could you be a barbarian and a Christian at the same time? It didn't seem possible for them. So after the city of Rome had been sacked by the barbarians, everyone was terrified and confused. Roman civilization and the church fall together, and that was horrifying. Augustine was a bishop, and people are asking questions. What's going on? What's going to happen to us? What is God doing? Now, Augustine was a theologian, but he was also a pastor, and people need comfort, assurance, and answers. So this is what Augustine the pastor tells his people when the world is falling apart. He tells his flock, in this world, there have always been two cities, existing side by side, going on parallel tracks throughout history. They are the city of man and the city of God. The city of man is the world we see around us, power, authority, culture. The city of God is how God preserves a people set apart so he can use them to restore the world and reconcile creation to himself. Now, in a previous era, the city of God was Jerusalem, and the city of man were the various pagan empires that were the enemies of God's people: Egypt, Babylon, Assyria. By Augustine's day and our day, the city of God is the Christian church. Now, God has been building, growing, and nurturing and developing the city of God throughout all human history. He traces the history of God's work throughout history: Abel, Seth, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Israel. Within this fallen world, God has been developing his city. Now, Augustine points out that for the past 100 years or so in the Roman Empire, something interesting and kind of weird happened. The Roman Empire actually became Christianized after the Roman Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity, and with the Edict of Milan of 313 AD, Christianity became more or less the unofficial religion of the Roman Empire. And so by Augustine's day, people began to think that to be Roman was to be Christian, and to be Christian was to be Roman, and the distinction between the city of God and the city of man blurred. So when it looks like the Roman Empire, civilization itself is about to crumble, they are terrified and confused. If Rome falls, well, then Christianity falls, right? So into this chaos, confusion, horror, Augustine speaks. Augustine tells Christians, remember who you are. You are not citizens of the city of man. You're confused. You are citizens of the city of God. And he tells Christians, you are, in Latin, peregrinus, which is translated as resident aliens. You are just passing through. This is not your home country. He told them that they are a distinct people, citizens of Jerusalem. He writes, O God's own people, O body of Christ, O high-born race of foreigners on earth, you do not belong here. You belong somewhere else. So the city of man may fail. All human civilizations will fall. But the city of God will persist. When this world comes to an end, the world will be made anew, and that will be the fulfillment of the city of God. So if we just look at the world with our eyes, you might despair. It just seems chaotic and awful. Our world seems so disordered. But God has been and still is building the city of God. Most of the time, we just can't see what he's doing, or we're not fully aware of his grand plans. Augustine writes that we still live in this world. We depend on and benefit from this world, the culture, society, government, laws, and order. But we are distinct by our yearnings for something better. Augustine writes, now let us hear, brothers, let us hear and sing, let us pine for the city where we are citizens. By pining, we are already there. We have already cast our hope like an anchor on the coast. I sing of somewhere else, not here, for I sing with my heart, not my flesh. All the good things you yearn for, they are only fulfilled partially in this world, the city of man. The good things in this world are a shell, a shadow, but they are fulfilled ultimately and fully in the city of God. We live in this world, but we are distinct from the rest of the world by the things we love, hope for, and yearn for. We have to resist being engulfed by the unthinking habits of the world because we love something greater. Well, Augustine cautions us. If I tell you that you are not citizens of the city of man, but you are, in fact, citizens of the city of God, you might think that I'm telling you ought to abandon this world, run away, be an escapist, hide from the world, insulate yourself, live in a bubble, a Christian bubble. Well, that will be wrong. There are two easy options. On the one hand, you can fully identify and belong to the world, the city of man. You would be worldly, and that'd be wrong. On the other hand, you can fully identify with the city of God, then abandon this world. That's also wrong. Augustine calls us to do something much harder. We must be otherworldly in this world. We need to love both the city of God and the city of man. But our loves need to be properly ordered. Here is one pertinent historical example. In the year 165 AD, the smallpox epidemic swept through the Roman Empire. It was, of course, the worst in the cities. While others fled cities, Christians stayed in the urban areas during the plague, ministering and caring for the sick. Why? Because they loved the world enough to care for it, to risk their lives. But why did they risk their lives? Because they also knew they were destined for a better place.